Welcome back to Highly Respected. I'm your host, Scott Greer. We've got another terrific, incredible episode for you today. And sure enough, some of the topics that I'm to talk about today are very familiar with listeners who've been listening to recent episodes. So I hope you're excited for that. Sit back and enjoy your Monday commute home at 5 o'clock because you're, of course, listening to the live premiere at 5 o'clock. As you should, unless you're one of those people, decides they can't make it to the 5 o'clock premiere. They feel like they're too good enough for the 5 o'clock premiere. But I understand, but we know the true fans are listening to the live stream at 5 o'clock. And our topics I'm going to discuss today, of course, if anyone's been following my Twitter, and if you've seen the news that I will be appearing on the Kill Stream for a discussion, not a debate or anything like that. It will with Ramsey Paul later this week. It'll be on Thursday, I think at 9:30. And it starts. They haven't nailed down the time yet, but we'll go on there and I'll discuss the viability of secession. And so I don't want to belabor the point too much. And the past two episodes, that's all I've talked about. Pretty much all I've talked about is secession, Civil War. And even an IQ supplement I did 2 weeks ago, that was also about this topic. So wanted to give our listeners some other things to discuss, but there are just things I have to discuss on this matter. And there was an event over the weekend that gives me room to talk about this and to argue my point on this matter. So if many of you would have heard, there was a Justice for J6 rally in D.C. over the weekend. And the purpose of it was fine. It was wanting to, show, bring attention to the political prisoners who are locked up for January 6th protests. There's still many of them. They've been detained for months. It's worthwhile to bring attention to it. And there's been congressmen who've staged like demonstrations and, try to go to the jail. But at the same time, hosting a mass rally at the Capitol over J6, considering what happened January 6th, not the wisest move, not the wisest move. And especially with the climate we're in, and it's going straight into Washington, D.C., not the smartest move. I think most people realize this. And there was a very low turnout, in part because everyone was calling it a Fed trap, including even Donald Trump was, saying that this is not wise, don't go. This is what the law enforcement wants you to do. And based on photos and videos of the event, like a fourth of the attendees appear to be undercover cops, law enforcement. They even arrested a guy who was an undercover cop that they didn't realize is an undercover cop. They're like, oh, your badge? Oh, you're here undercover? Oh shit. Okay, we'll bring you out of here. Sorry for blowing your cover. It was an event where there were thousands of reporters and dozens of attendees. Not really a very good turnout. Didn't really bring attention to it. And when you look at the response to it, it wasn't like, wow, January 6th, these guys are protesters and are political prisoners. Instead, they're saying, look how pathetic the Trump moment is. Trump can't get his supporters out there. These guys are losers, which before the event, they're like, this is terrorism. There was a NBC News article saying like there will be people who would excuse and defend the horrible actions of hosting a nonviolent rally in Washington, D.C. And they're like, this will weigh on your consciousness. And all of this was the whole response about how there's like an upcoming terror attack. You need to flee the city. And even with like the January 6th, Washington, D.C. was left largely fine. Like people were not getting harmed in the streets. This was not a BLM riot. And yet they went in and nobody was there. And then all these people who were warning about another massive terror attack and can't believe the terrorists are here and these traitors and we need like the whole military out in force, then began laughing at how these people are losers and there's none of them. So they immediately switched on a dime from saying these people are about to launch the most devastating terror attack on U.S. soil in ages to look at these losers. Like Trump has no support anymore, which is obvious. They're always winning and always pushing forward their agenda. So even if you have a nonviolent rally, then they say that you're losers. I mean, there's nothing that they can do to ever praise you. But the left-wing response is, of course, not what we're wanting to talk about today. what I really wanted to say is that I think people were rightfully concerned that this was going to be a Fed honeypot. There was like a tweet I had which people misinterpreted, and of course, had to delete, so people were not getting the correct interpretation. So I wanted to be clear, but there's this tweet I've been hearing all week from people who are angry about my Civil War takes on Twitter about how people are ready to revolt. People have had enough. They're ready to go out in the streets. They don't care, pussy. They're tired of your whining. They're ready to do something and man up and do something. And then all these same people are like, oh, hell no, we're not going to a public demonstration. That's a Fed trap. And I was like, okay, well, you were right. They were right on that. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but you have to think it's like, if you think going to a public demonstration is dangerous and is going to get you arrested, now imagine you joining some type of militia group where you're doing paramilitary training and guys are talking about their terror plots that they want to do and all that stuff, and you would be like, there's no Fed infiltration here. It's not like the federal government is looking desperately for these types of groups so they can uphold these groups and say, we need a domestic war on terror. I'm going to join these guys. I'm pretty sure these 15 dudes and me are going to take down the federal government. And it's like, no, like that's like, you should be much more skeptical of that. And every person who's like, well, my militia group isn't going to be Fed infiltrated, is like, okay, if you want to believe that, if the Feds can somehow, invest all these resources into this matter, they're not going to somehow, they're like, oh, this super special militia group, we just can't infiltrate. How? Because the guy on Twitter promises it's not able to infiltrate, so we can't do anything about it. I mean, most of the people who are talking tough on Twitter are just not doing anything. Like the people who are like always saying, oh, we have to do something, like what's your alternative to this? It's like, well, you're not actually doing anything about it, because if you were doing something about it, you would likely be in jail right now. You would likely, because I mean, they're on the hunt for people like, trying to do terror plots and plot for war. They're trying to get those people. And if you actually were, like, fortunately you're not serious, you would probably not be announcing it on Twitter. But all these people are like, we're going to announce this on Twitter. This is our secessionist movement. The Americans are ready for a peaceful national divorce. And it's like, no, they're not. I don't want to belabor my points because I've already repeated it enough. And people are probably going to get tired about it. If you want to listen to my full points, I've got an incredible episode last week, and I've got an incredible IQ supplement. So I'm just having some additional points here. I mean, the first point I really want to emphasize, that I don't think I emphasize enough, is that the people who are most eager for you to adopt this framework are FBI agents. Because they want you to know, if you feel like there's no political solution, there's no peaceful solution, there's no working within the system, that's either A, going to make you so demoralized that you just give up politics in general, you just focus on sports, you just focus on your own hobbies, you are just apathetic, you don't care anymore because there's nothing that you can do. So they like that, they really like that, because that makes you a dutiful, obedient citizen. Or you start to do something stupid, you get involved in something stupid, you're like calling for violence and stuff, and like, oh, hey, here's some people we can now use we can arrest, and then we can claim that domestic terrorists, right-wing extremists, are the #1 threat to America. Like, look at these guys we just arrested. Don't worry about how the FBI agent or FBI informant planned and encouraged and made this whole thing up. Don't worry about that. These guys are ready to do mass damage to this country, and that's why we need more resources, and we need more censorship, and we need more hate speech laws. We need more gun control. We need more all of this, because there's just a right-wing terror threat out there. And it's thanks to these idiots who think that they can overthrow the government with 12 people that we're able to make this narrative stronger. And the feds have this power. I mean, you guys have to think, it's like, they have 600 people arrested over January 6th. That's a protest. Most of these people, it's just for the crime of trespassing on federal property without permission. And these people have been locked up in jail for a long time. Now imagine if they had a lot of people with charges that, like actual terrorist charges or plotting. Look at all these charges that are with these Michigan militia guys. A lot of them are facing 20 years in jail. Like, that's no joke. That's no joke. And you're like, this is what these charges carry. They carry a long, lengthy prison sentence, and the longer the sentence, the better it looks for the FBI and the better it looks for their narrative. And you shouldn't fall in these traps. If you're worried about this demonstration, you should also be worried about people promising you civil war, talking about criminal activity, illegal activities, going all and on about how we can really do it this time, brother. Get ready for the war. And then it's man up, stop being a pussy. Like this, all these informants in every single group use that exact same rhetoric to nab their targets. So you got to be smart, and that's the main reason I don't want people to fall in this trap, because it's unrealistic, first off, and second off, it could lead you to doing very stupid things that could get you in jail. So you should not avoid it. And it's not like and people always want to misconstrue my position as saying, oh, just vote. I'm not saying just vote. There's a lot of other things that have to happen besides voting. But you should realize that you should not go outside the system and make yourself a target and get arrested just because you feel like the last election, didn't solve anything. You still have to work, with the system. It's not as exciting, and people are like, that's cucked. And it's like, okay, well, what's your alternative? Violent civil war that is launched by me and 12 friends. It's like, oh, wow, that's really realistic. And that's what some of these people are saying. And they're like, what is your alternative to secession and civil war? This is it. And it's like, okay, you're talking about a total fantasy situation. It's like, you're saying that we can't bring Middle Earth into real life. Well, what's your solution? What's your alternative? It's something like saying something so stupid, and then they're demanding an alternative. It's not like saying you have an obvious idea of what to do, and that's the only thing to do. And it's well, we have to, there's no other alternative. Instead, people are just proposing an entirely fantasy situation. It's you're not wanting us to bring back dinosaurs and that will solve everything. Well, what's your solution? It's you don't have to propose, you don't have to respond to a solution with to something that's completely off the wall and crazy, and that's not going to happen. And even though with I'll discuss this more with Ramsey Paul, but if you're looking at the viability of secession, put aside the desirability of secession versus the viability. Right now in this decade, it's not going to happen. As I've repeated time and time again, state governments are far more dependent on the federal government. Americans don't have this sense of there's not, for the people that we want to separate, there is not a separate identity for them from America as is. There's not a strong regional attachment. There's not a strong ethnic attachment. There's not a strong religious attachment. That's separate from the rest of the population. That's going to encourage them to just completely separate. And all these ideas, it's talking about giving up all urban areas and coastal areas to the libtards, and you're stuck in rural hinterland, and you're this will work. We've got all the food and water. And then it ignores how, the agricultural industry is tied in with the national economy and tied in with the international economy and relies on migrant labor. I mean, majority of its workers are migrant labor, most of them illegal. And then they're oh yeah, no, there's these so many silly ideas with rural America. All these people are are you an urbanite? It's you're likely an urbanite. And the impression on Twitter is that rural America is all farmers, all farmers. 50% of America is farmers. Don't look at the data that only shows that a little over 1% of Americans are farmers. 50% of America are farmers. The agricultural industry, with relying on migrant laborers, that's not who's depending on the food. It's white people on homesteads that are self-sustaining. That's providing all the food for America. And rural America is full of blonde hair, blue-eyed bodybuilders on these farms who, there's no drugs in sight. I don't know what you've been talking about, the opioid epidemic. And there's these really healthy, vibrant communities. And there's some ways in rural America. I'm not hating on rural America too much, but people overlook a lot of the problems associated with rural America about the fact that most people are leaving. There's a ton of drug. I mean, the opioid epidemic is hitting rural America far more than anywhere else. And you go to a lot of these towns and it's like really run down. Like you're just, and there's a lot of obesity you'll see. And a lot of this isn't necessarily rural Americans' fault. I'm not saying that they're like lesser people. I'm just saying like you people like imagine that it's like they go there and it's like the ethno state or something, and it's like clean streaks and like high tech, and like everyone's a bodybuilder, and you know they're all going to their Latin Mass cathedral. That's also the funniest thing is like most of these people are like complaining about urbanites. They're like, I look at their profile, they're like Orthodox or like Catholic, and I'm like, rural America is, like thinks all those are pagan religions. Like they're mostly for like not in the Midwest. I mean, the Midwest, like there's some rural areas that are pretty Catholic, but for most of Middle America, it's very fundamentalist Protestant. And they're not going to be like, wow, we're so excited for Latin Mass anime girl Avies to be in our community. They fit right in. It's like, that's not like, they're going to like primitive Baptist churches. I mean, or like they're going to really fundamentalist Baptist churches or other places if they're there. I mean, it's like a very, very hardcore Protestant. It's like one of these places where they really don't like Catholics. And yet all the people complaining about urbanites are like, got Catholic or Orthodox in their thing. Like I even saw like this one person who's like, I was tweeting something about Chattanooga, and this person's like, "Oh, it's nice, but make sure you got to stay out in rural Tennessee. You don't want to go in the urban areas." And then this person had like Orthodox in their thing, and I'm like, "Man, the only places Orthodox churches are in, urban areas like Chattanooga, Knoxville, Nashville, and Memphis. It's not in." It's not. There's not like some massive Orthodox cathedral sitting in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee. But like people think this, so it's like a lot of fantasies that are going on. I know, like some of the you don't want to pick on people too much, and it's like it's okay to believe certain things, but it's like a lot of the stuff is just completely unrealistic, and it doesn't understand stuff. So it's like it's when people are just like talking about scenarios and theories, it's harmless. But when it gets to the point that like people are promising that civil war is on the horizon, it's coming, like we're a civil war soon, that's encouraging people to do stupid things and to join stupid groups that gets them arrested or, ruins their life. And for what? I mean, the civil war is not coming. I mean, and even with the separation and secession thing, I think maybe you could say over time, like some form, like people need to be working to secession or separation from the globalist American empire. But at this, like you have to achieve a lot of steps before getting there. We're not there yet. You have to establish a firm identity where people can rally around and say like this is going to be the basis of our new national identity. That's not there yet. As I've said before, I think only like 15% of whites have say they have a strong racial identity, and it's like not in their whole identity is with the American government right now. I mean, that's improving. We need to get people to overcome that and see themselves as like to identify with the American people, and that American people is not defined by immigrants or others. It's defined by the people who actually founded America. You need to get them to that point. You need to get to the point of the state governments are willing to resist federal government. I mean, we're not there at that point. I mean, Greg Abbott like backed us down a lot from Biden. He wanted to close the ports of entry to the border. Biden told him no. He backed out. He said he just complained about it. I mean, like we're not if state governors are afraid to, close ports of entry when we're having an invasion happening. They're not at the point where like, oh, I'm going to go to secession. And even then, at this point, with that, it's not even the federal government they fear. They fear corporate America. Corporate America is not going to go along with secession. You have to just look at these times where there's like a bill that they put forward, such as when they had bathroom bills. They would pull back from that when corporations say, we don't like this. When they had religious freedom bills, they all pulled back and neutered those bills because corporations were threatening to boycott. And that happens time and time again. And even with these transgender sports, with like Kristi Noem pulling back from that. And even with mask mandates and other stuff, they feel the pressure on this. And corporations start complaining they're gonna cape. And people want to be like, well, they should just let them boycott and like tell we don't need the corporations here. We don't need urban areas. We can all just be homesteading farmers. And it's like, you separate and you're telling people like we'll separate and then we'll have like mass unemployment. And all these people who live in the city are now like, and also these people arguing this are not farmers on homesteads either. They're whatever. They're just imagining themselves on Twitter. So all these people now have to like, who have no farming ability whatsoever, are now being transformed into farmers, and they're living in shacks. Because there's also probably going to be problems with utilities and other things because those are pulling out. And this is not what necessarily people want. Like, if people are separating because they think they'll have a better life, they're not separating so they'll have a worse quality of life. Some people may say that's a better quality of life, but for the majority of people, they're not going to say that's a better quality of life, especially if they're unemployed and they're having to completely change their life and how the way they live, and they're like, well, it'll be good for them. And it's like, even for the people saying this would be complaining afterwards. Because all of these things would be tied to the federal government and tied to the national economy, and they'd quickly leave if these states were like wanting to separate. And these states would also have no money for roads. They are very little money for roads. They wouldn't have any money for disaster relief because they are always begging the federal government for that. They would have less money for police. They'd probably lose the National Guard because that's mostly funded by the federal government. They'd lose, most of their infrastructure projects, money for schools. All this would be a problem with these states, and they wouldn't. And also, like, the way to replace that is having a thriving economy, but you're taking away most of the economy as well. And so people don't really, this is not a realistic solution. Now, the only way you can hope for a separation and it would never be peaceful. America set a precedent in the Civil War that would not let any state peacefully separate. Like, that would cause war, and we would be willing to sacrifice thousands and thousands of lives to ensure that they stay within the Union. And people just like, oh, we're just going to peacefully separate. We'll just come to an agreement. And like, why would the federal government agree to that? Like, there's no reason for the federal government to agree to something like that. And so the only way you could ever have a separation is if the federal government collapses. And there's going to be a lot of problems with that. I don't see the federal government collapsing anytime soon. And that's why I'm not a fan of separation. But I do think there are things like, I'm not saying this whole situation is hopeless, or you can just say like voting counts. Like, there are things that are support. Like, I think red counties separating from blue states, that's very realistic. That's very popular. That doesn't come with like all the crazy scenarios that like a full like breakaway national separation would cause. And it's a cause to rally around, and it's very popular in red counties in New York and Oregon, Washington, California, and many other places that want to separate. And you also have to encourage these states to seize more of their power away from the federal government. To all these people who are like statists, who are like, we want a stronger federal government. We also want the federal government. Like, my favorite types are those who support secession and UBI and universal healthcare now. It's like, why would people secede if the federal government gives them UBI and universal healthcare? It's like, I want us to secede, but first I want the federal government to give me all these benefits. It's like, why would people be less inclined to secede if they know that's going to go away? But people don't think these things through. So, but I was just going off. Is like, that's another problem with the people who are obsessed with making the federal government stronger and the state stronger, and like being statist is like, well, if you're wanting like eventually to reach a point where you could theoretically separate, or there could be some type of peaceful separation, you need to have these states have more power and more balls to resist the federal government. And we need to get to that point, and we need to encourage it. So we need to encourage, like, Greg Abbott deciding to enforce border policy on his own, immigration policy on his own. That would be a huge improvement. And like, other red state governors also take immigration enforcement into their own hands because the federal government won't do it. There's things like that. And, just organizing, creating a network within, your community, among your friend circle, just like, if something happens, you have a group of people you can rely on, or, it's a group of people that you can, influence your local community, like getting on school boards, city boards, and taking over your local GOP. There's stuff like this that, like, it's not as exciting as Civil War or secessionism, but it's far more realistic, and it's not going to land you in federal prison. So more thoughts on this will be had in the discussion, not the debate. It's not a blood sport with Ramsey Paul. I like Ramsey Paul. We'll probably come to a lot of agreements. It'll probably be minor disagreements. We'll flesh them out. We'll probably, I think we'll see each other's points, and we'll just flesh out this topic. So more on that will be discussed on Thursday. Moving right along, I've got a new topic. I think we've heard enough about secession and civil war for today. I want to deliver a white pill. This is a white pill. Like, everyone has been predicting that they're going to pass amnesty, that amnesty is a certainty. It doesn't look like amnesty will pass anytime soon. The Senate parliamentarian ruled that I have to backtrack. First off, I'll give what the news is. The Senate parliamentarian ruled that there's this bill that the Democrats are trying to pass, a $3.5 trillion budget bill, supposedly, and was going to have an amnesty for at least 8 million illegal aliens. The Senate parliamentarian ruled they cannot have the provision legalizing immigrants because that doesn't have it doesn't have anything to do with the budget, and it's just making immigration policy. This kills the amnesty portion of the bill. They can't get around the Senate parliamentarian. There's already reporters who are suggesting that the Senate parliamentarian has no power. Like Sohail Kapoor, who's supposed to be like a independent journalist, free. He's not supposed to be a partisan journalist. He's just straight news for NBC. He's like, the parliamentarian has no power. And then this guy, one of my least favorite reporters to follow, because this guy, he'll always, if anyone's tweeting about sports or entertainment, he'll go to Wikipedia, look it up, and then act like he knows the topic. He'll be like, wow, LeBron really did that, really scored well this game. It's a very much just trying, like most Indians, trying to fit in, even though he doesn't understand what's going on. Digression aside, they are trying to get pushing Democrats to get rid of the filibuster, but they're absolutely not going to get rid of the filibuster. I mean, Manchin and Sinema, the two senators who are most opposed to eliminating the filibuster, are in a far stronger position right now. They don't want to get rid of the filibuster because they know if they got rid of the that it puts them in a much stronger position to keep the filibuster. They feel that it's going to upset their voters, and there's several other moderate Democrats who are not as open and vocal about opposing the elimination of the filibuster, who also oppose it, but not as vocal as Sinema and Manchin. There's nothing to convince or persuade Manchin and Sinema to give up their opposition, so they're not going to get rid of the filibuster, The most that they can possibly hope for in this bill is maybe reducing their vision of how many people they want to give amnesty. Maybe the Senate parliamentarian may rule that they can give amnesty to dreamers, but even I don't think that. They may have the best case scenario is giving legalization to those who have already received deferred action on childhood arrivals, DACA, as we all know it as. If they have those, and those are, of course, illegal aliens who came to the U.S. As minors, supposedly, and they could give them, say permanent legalization, but even DACA recipients, that's less than 1 million. I think it's only 700,000. Well, not only 700,000, but only 700. I keep saying only, but roughly 700,000. Probably, I think less, a little bit less. Versus that is way better than 8 million. But even then, I just don't think any of these provisions will get it through. And I think the Senate parliamentarian is going to take more a chunk out of this bill because they're loading it up with all these left-wing objectives and a wish list. And you're only supposed to pass a bill that it's extremely pertinent to the budget, and this obviously has nothing to do with the budget. Even their argument with for amnesty with saying we're gonna have such a big boon to our budget by giving illegals amnesty that we need to do this. This has a lot to do with the budget, and they're like, no, that's stupid. So they're using idiotic arguments. I think this whole bill is gonna die. And the main part that they're excited about was amnesty. The left insisted in the House that it must contain amnesty provisions, and now that's over. And Manchin and Sinema weren't happy with this bill, not because of the immigration provisions, but because it cost too much money and it was going to increase taxes. Not the ideal objectives, but it did show that even they were hesitant about it. But now they don't have to worry about it because the Senate parliamentarian is likely to kill this bill. outright. I mean, already the main reason that the Democrats wanted to push it is that it would give secret amnesty. That's already not going to be in the bill. So this is a white pill. I don't, their whole, people have been predicting, all and on that if the Republicans lost the Senate, that they would easily pass through amnesty. And time again, we have seen that they can't pass through amnesty. There was Biden's so-called comprehensive amnesty package. They call it comprehensive immigration reform. They tried to pass. That was dead on arrival. No Republicans wanted to support it, and it only could get Democrat support. Then they did two smaller bills. They did one to give Dreamers amnesty, and then another to give illegal farm workers amnesty. Those passed through the House, but they're dead in the Senate because they don't have 10 votes. They don't have 10 Republicans who want to vote for either bill. And the failure of this secret budget bill that's with amnesty is not going to encourage more support from Republicans for any other amnesty idea. So all these things, even when I predicted last year or early this year when Republicans had lost the Senate, that this does give the opportunity that maybe they'll do something on DACA. That I saw no opportunity for them to pass the type of mass amnesty, a type of comprehensive amnesty bill that we saw with the Gang of Eight in 2013, or the amnesty bills that they tried to pass in 2006 and 2007. I didn't see any possibility for that, but I did see something for something small like a DACA amnesty or permanent legalization for these so-called dreamers. But even that's not possible, so it's even exceeding my expectations. So one thing you have to say that is white-pilled on is Republicans have changed on immigration, or at least when it comes to illegal immigration and amnesty. There were House Republicans who voted for these amnesty bills in the House. I think it was 10 or 11 that voted for the Dreamer amnesty. It was in the teens, and then I think it was around 30 that voted for the farm worker amnesty. And there's a big reason why they voted for the farm worker amnesty, because big agriculture wants it, and so there's corporate interest behind it, and that's why they're supporting it. Not really many corporate interests behind our strong lobbying effort from corporations for the DACA amnesty or the Dreamer amnesty, so they didn't back it. But I mean, it's a far different from what we saw back in 2013 and 2006 and 2007. I mean, in 2006 and 2007, George W. Bush was the main proponent of amnesty. And there was all these Republicans back and forth. And there was a very different situation. There was quite a number of Democrats who opposed amnesty. I mean, Bernie Sanders voted against amnesty in 2007. Fast forward to 2013, every Democrat is on board, and so are at least a third of Republicans. I mean, if you recall, some people may not recall, but the amnesty in the Senate got 68 votes in favor of it. And it only died in the House because the majority leader at that time, Republicans had the majority, Eric Cantor, there was still disagreements, and Boehner realized he didn't want to upset his caucus too much, but they were still negotiating it. They were still working on it, and it looked like they were going to have a bill sometime in 2014. But Eric Cantor lost to an immigration hawk and Dave Bratt in the Republican primary in his district in 2014, and that killed amnesty. And so there were still these Republican, prominent Republicans who were wanting to say, I want amnesty, we need amnesty, this is the way of the path forward for the party. And that was still the case in the Republican primary. Before Trump, every candidate was in favor of some form of amnesty. Even Ted Cruz, he said that there could be some path to legalization. And so he was open to some ideas, but he wanted border security first. He was open in this idea, but once Trump entered the race, all those people shifted their rhetoric, but there were still people openly advocating for amnesty. But after 4 years of Trump as president, they realized that it's politically disastrous for them to advocate for Gang of Eight, comprehensive amnesty style bills. They can't survive in a Republican primary. So they no longer want to push for it. And there's still these guys who love immigration. They try to increase immigration all the time through, increasing guest workers or, support for various, these smaller forms of amnesty. There's a lot of people like that, like Tom Tillis, North Carolina. He's also salivating over the prospect of all these Afghan refugees coming here. There's Lindsey Graham. Langford from Oklahoma, Ben Sass. There's a lot of people in the House who are also in favor of this stuff, like Peter Meyer, that horrible never Trumper who's always on TV talking about how much he loves Rick and Morty, and he's got a stupid beard. And there's a lot of people like that. But in terms of they have to be more cautious about it. They can't go around using these rhetoric and arguments that they used in 2013, where it's the only hope for the Republican Party is to support amnesty and to legalize these at least 11 million illegals. That's the only hope for the party. They know that they can no longer use that, so they instead we just want to give amnesty to dreamers or to illegal farm workers to help our economy, and that's it. So this is a victory for our side that Republicans are so firmly opposed to amnesty. Even the moderate squishes in the Senate, even people like Tom Tillis and Langford and Lindsey Graham realize they can't support a comprehensive amnesty program platform anymore. Are the bill that the Democrats were proposing, because it contained no border security or no immigration enforcement mechanisms. So it was just a straight amnesty, and it didn't even make the pretense that we're ending illegal immigration. No, it's just we're giving them all amnesty, and we're doing nothing to prevent future illegal immigration. Even then, they're okay, we can't vote for this. But so they don't have the votes, and all those people were saying oh, are Republicans doomed without us holding the line and keeping the Senate red? The worst thing that could have happened is not going to happen for this term, at least. Unless they come up with some new idea, but this is their last hope. This was they found a minutia of the way the Congress works. They're if we have a budget bill, we don't require 60 votes because it deals with the budget and we can just pass it on a partisan basis and we can get it through. This is their last best hope. Now they have to go back to the normal legislative process, and Republicans are even more inclined to oppose it, especially when they see the border invasion, the border crisis, and they're realizing that illegal immigration is going to help them in the 2022 election. They don't want to go with any amnesty. People like Lindsey Graham and Tom Tillis, I know those people are even smart enough to not go along with this stuff. And especially with these House candidates that are now having to worry about getting primaried by Trump-backed candidates, they don't want to deal with this either. So very different situation. There could still be some other attempts, but this was the last great hope, and this was a big major concern. Because if the Senate parliamentarian had okayed it, it was up to Manchin and Sinema to vote against it, and it was less certain that they would do so, and that would have mean at least 8 million illegals would have been given a pathway to citizenship, and that would have been very bad for America. Don't even need to explain why. And so I think, this is a white pill on two fronts that's showing, they're not going to pass amnesty, or they're not going to pass a large-scale amnesty. There may be, a chance that they may pass some smaller scale of amnesty, giving 1 million or so illegals a pathway to citizenship. But even I don't see that happening based on how the immigration fight is progressing in the national discourse with the border invasion and, the border mess. And even with Afghan refugees coming in, I think the immigration issue is going to side more to the right. And especially with the American public opinion, they probably, even with the border crisis is having an effect on American public opinion of support for amnesty. It is declining much more so because they're seeing this is going to attract more illegals here. This is not going to end illegal immigration. So they're less inclined to support it. So that's the white pill that it's not going to pass. And then the other white pill is that Republicans, no matter how squishy and moderate they are, and even for the non-ideological, they're not necessarily convinced that this is bad, but they realize that their political survival depends on opposing amnesty. And there are not future leaders of the party who are like Marco Rubio, who are now out there begging for mass amnesty and begging for more immigration. They realize that it's bad for their political careers to do this, and thus their change. They'll still vote for this stuff. They still want more immigrants, but they know they can't shout it from the rooftops and claim it's the future. The party's future depends on it. And so that's another white pill to take from this event. So we'll keep an eye on it. Now moving on to our third and final topic before the cognitive IQ questions, which we've got a lot today. All right, I call them the cognitive IQ. It's the cognitive elite. How dare I get the name wrong? But as you all know what the name is, right? So sometimes, you get so hyped up and your IQ is so high that you sometimes forget the names of your own programs. But moving along, the last topic I want to talk about is our brave and noble chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, was found out to have been calling China to say that we will warn you of any potential attack that Trump may launch against you, technically indicating some form of treason and disloyalty to the government, and siding with a potential enemy over mindless hysteria that Trump was somehow going to launch a war. And the response to this has completely changed. When this was first revealed last week, pretty much everyone's like, this is a serious offense. This is a serious broach. Like, what is he doing? Like, there needs to be an immediate investigation. He needs to be fired. He needs to be resigned. All these major people coming out. This is like it. And then first off, this event had been so washed away by the other events of last week, namely the media's obsession with COVID and deciding that all unvaccinated people need to die. They've decided that, oh, well, we're not going to even talk about it. Even on the Sunday shows, they all defended Milley. Everyone was defending Milley. All the late night entertainers were defending Milley. Several media commentators on MSNBC were defending Milley. And eventually, the former Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman have defended Milley. And even these defense secretaries who had been complaining about Milley, they were serving under Trump, they then realized, like, oh, he had gotten prior permission from us to engage in these calls. And they're like, okay, actually, no, he's not a traitor anymore because he got us, he got our approval. And this is all done without the White House's knowledge. The White House was incensed. And this has all probably just changed because Trump called him a traitor. And this, the media's like, oh, well, we can't be on the side with Trump with anything. So it's okay now to side with the Chinese against the American government, which there's a lot of people, who would take that position. I mean, there were these, when Trump was going after China for COVID last spring, spring of 2020, media was running cover for China. They were saying, like, actually, China's contained this virus 100%. China has done everything right. And, China's doing really good things. We like China. So everyone came into the defense of China when Trump was attacking them. Trump could get the media to defend anyone. You have to remember there was at a time when the media was defending North Korea. Because Trump was attacking North Korea. Trump could get anyone, and Trump also got people to claim that Baltimore was a fantastic city and everyone would want to live there because Trump called it a shithole. All these people, they would jump through hoops to defend anything that Trump was attacking, no matter how much it was obvious to any human being that this is a terrible thing and Trump is right. They would defend it. So they would go to defend China. And in this case, they sided with China against the real threat, which is Trump. Trump is the real threat. And this goes along with, all this concern about domestic terrorism and the national security threat. As the real national security threat is not considered China or Islamic terror. It's considered ordinary white Americans. That's the real terror threat. And that's what every intelligence agency says time and time again. They say it over and over again. They are concerned about China, and part of the reason that we're leaving Afghanistan is so we can pivot to countering China. But at the same time, we're never going to think that China is a greater threat than white Trump supporters. And that can be seen by the Milley reaction, is that there has been an increase in anti-China rhetoric in the mainstream media and among Democrats, because they no longer have to worry about Trump, monopolizing anti-China rhetoric. And the national security state, the military, and the intelligence community definitely wants us to focus more on China. But when it comes to Trump and his supporters, they will take China's side against Trump and his supporters. And that's the fact of the matter. It's like, this is pretty insane that you would that we would have this case of a Joint Chief Chairman, calling up China and saying, I will give you valuable information if we're going to launch a potential attack, and I oppose our president. and I'm going to make sure that this war doesn't happen. And for no matter what the reason for the war, and him basically, and this is all over hysteria too. I mean, there was like no threat of China launching a war against China, or Trump launching a war against China. And it really shows the priorities here. And like, it's, the President Biden expressed full confidence in Milley. Like, he went along with it. Like, it's fine. Everyone's cool with this. And then you're just like, what? This is insane. Like, I mean, we impeached Donald Trump over a phone call with Ukraine, like talking about an investigation, an investigation they already had involving Hunter Biden. We overthrew, we impeached him for that, but like the general calling a hostile enemy and saying, I'm going to help you in the event of a war that may take place between America and us. And people are like, oh, thank you for preserving our democracy. And you're like, what? This just shows like the level of power. And also, there's a lot of points. I know I said I'm not going to bring up anything about civil war and secession, but I do have to point this out, that this does show that we cannot trust the military at all in this situation. The military would stay loyal to the globalist American empire. No matter the situation, they would never side with us. I mean, they view us as the real threat, not China, not Russia, not Syria, not Iran, not Taliban. It's us. That's who they view us as the real threat. And this is why they felt justified in calling up China. And in these people, these are not people who, this isn't Hollywood. This isn't Wall Street. These aren't people who are trying to make a buck off China. These are people who their career is like assessing and saying like, we view China as a threat. Now, Milley himself, I think, is one of those people who's not a full-on China hawk based on past comments. He said that we don't view China as an enemy. He said Russia is the real threat. But that is becoming an increasingly minority view among the IC and the military. I mean, the military there's a reason why this anti-China rhetoric is becoming more mainstream and more acceptable in the public now that Trump is gone. And that's because it is what it's shared by the deep state and these lackeys within the globalist American empire. They do view China as a threat to American hegemony throughout the world. And so they do want us to counter it. And that's, as I'm repeating myself, that's partially the reason why we're getting out of Afghanistan, so we can have more resources to counter China. But at the same time, like, they can't be trusted when it comes to matters of Trump and the domestic insurgency, domestic terror threat. So there is something about China. I wanted to make this a bigger point about China, and saying how China is viewed and what's going to be the change with China. But there's a lot of other topics to talk about, and I'll return to this eventually. I mean, China is never going to go away as a topic, so we'll eventually have a China show at some point. But with Milley himself, I thought, they are looking for a fall guy. When I first saw this event happening, I was like, oh, they're going to make Milley the fall guy for Afghanistan. That's who they're going to point out, because they're not going to do Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense. They're not going to choose the black guy. That's never going to happen. Automatically, the media would say that's racist of Biden. Not going to choose Blinken. Blinken's a close confidant of Biden. If Blinken resigned, that's a real indictment on Biden. That's saying that the people he picked messed this up, and this reflects badly on Biden. And anyway, with Blinken and all these other people, they were reportedly wanting to stay in Afghanistan, and Biden said, no, we're leaving. And Biden had the political capital among his own party and within the media to push forward with it and not have to worry about the blowback from within his own government. And that's how we were able to get out of Afghanistan, which, as I don't want to belabor this point because I've made this in many past podcasts, Trump did not have that capital when he was in office. So, but Biden's still not going to blame Blinken. And Blinken, the fact that he opposed withdrawal would help him. And, that would actually make him more of a hero to the critics of the withdrawal. But with Milley, I thought it would be Milley because, conservatives really hate Milley. And this China stuff that they're putting out about him, that reduces his reputation even further. But now with this China stuff, he's like somehow flipped, treason into becoming a hero within the media. And the administration is expressing full confidence in him. And so is all these other major officials. And now it's become, like this thing that was like really dangerous before. It's now just saying, going into an anti-Trump rant about how dangerous we were to Trump taking us to war and ending our democracy forever. Thank you, God. Thank you, General Milley, for protecting our democracy by siding with the Chinese. So it doesn't even help with the fall guy. I think they still may pick Milley as the fall guy, and I think his response to one thing I've always worried is if whoever they make the fall guy may become a conservative media darling. And even though people are like, Milley may be too much, it may be too much of a stretch for conservative media ever see him as a hero. They've spent months and months seeing him as an enemy, from his comments claiming, all Trump supporters and protesters were Nazis, they're brown shirts, comparing Trump to Hitler, his comments on supporting critical race theory, and, people making him as the icon of everything wrong with the woke military. It'd be a stretch. But at the same time, when people, before the China stuff, I think that makes it too far. I don't think conservative media is ever going to, even if Milley was fired and then he turned into a hardcore Biden critic, I even think that the China stuff is a bridge too far. I could be wrong. But I don't think conservative media would turn him into a darling if he began criticizing the Biden administration if he was fired. But, it is possible. It is possible, and because people have to remember that when James Comey was fired, he was hated by the left when he was fired. And that's the reason why Trump fired him, is that they're like, okay, you know what, I will actually get brownie points from the media and the left if I fire him, because they think that James Comey is responsible for me getting elected. They view Comey as someone without principles. He's a weakling. The left does not like Comey. I'll get rid of him. When he got rid of Comey, initially, people were celebrating. I think when Stephen Colbert announced it, his audience applauded and went, woo, we're so happy that Comey was fired. And so did some of these media accounts. And people who were praising it immediately deleted their tweets 4 hours later and this is a threat to our democracy. Eventually the media realized wait a minute. It's much more beneficial for us to turn this into something to attack Trump with than to celebrate our worst enemy doing something that we may like. So they immediately changed their footing, changed their rhetoric on this. And due to the strong backlash that happened when Comey was fired, that led to the special prosecutor, that led to Mueller investigation, that led to one of the main disasters of the Trump administration, one of the main handicaps on the Trump administration doing anything and being really hobbled throughout his time was this Mueller investigation. And that was a result of the backlash and due to Comey being fired. So there's something like that and then the Comey was turned into a hero, even though they had just hated his guts. I don't know if that could happen with Milley, but that is possible if they're looking for a fall guy. And so I don't know if Biden is going to make someone a fall guy for what happened in Afghanistan, because he thinks it was a success. So anyone getting fired over it is showing that it was not a success, and that puts more blame on Biden. And Biden knows that hurt him in the polls more than any other issue. And he doesn't want to revive it. He wants people to forget about it. And firing somebody reminds people of it, and it creates a scandal, and it's something that the mainstream media would even attack him on. It's the only issue the mainstream media attack Biden on. So I don't know if he wants to do that, but if he ever did have a fall guy, I'm worried conservative media would turn this person into a hero, even if it's Mark Milley. But I think the new China news makes that unlikely to happen. But I could be wrong. So that is it for the regular topics. Now we're moving on to the cognitive elite questions. And as a reminder, you too can get the power to ask me questions or suggest guests and topics for Highly Respected if you sign up for Highly Respected's cognitive elite option at Highly Respected Substack. And that's highly-respected.substack.com. Today we have questions from two different people, so I want to emphasize this is a record. I had a third. There was actually a third person, but this person asked a lot of questions, and I'm gonna have to wait till next week's episode. So I'll still answer those questions next week. But You get so many cognitive elite questions like, whoa, I need a handle. So, but we will probably have multiple questions next week. And this one person, it's fine. We'll save. This person just asked a lot of questions with one, which you can ask as many questions as you want, but maybe need to be held off for a little bit. And they're not time sensitive, so it's okay. First question comes from Jerome. He asks, Scott, did you watch any of the Keith Woods logo debate on the kill stream? He wanted my highly respected take, and I can only say I watched a few clips, and most of them are the memes that are people making of logo data lists in this argument. I don't know. I looked up a little bit of what people were talking about. I guess it was like a fascism versus communism debate. I think Keith Woods was arguing for fascism, and Logo's side was arguing for communism. Not sure what the purpose of the debate is. The little clips I saw, the non-ones memes made of Logo, I was like, man, this is really autistic. So I don't know. I don't really have any real serious thoughts about it because I don't know. I don't really understand the productive nature of having. I mean, it's like a very academic question if you're going on about fascism and communism, but both of these people are advocating for either side, and I don't think either position offers answers to our current situation. And it's just like all arguing in theory. And some of the things I was just saying is like, well, that's not real communism. And they're like, yeah, this is real communism. And then like, that's not real fascism. And then like, oh yeah, no, it is real fascism. And I was like, okay. So I didn't really watch much of it. There's some goofy aspects of it, and it's whatever. I mean, people go on the kill stream. Hopefully the people seemed entertained by it, even though some people were very opposed to it. But hopefully we're not having to debate, but the Ramsey Paul, Scott M. Greer discussion hopefully generates as much entertainment among the viewers as that did. But no, I don't really have any strong opinions about it. And I would just say it's like, why are we? It's 2021. Why are we debating communism versus fascism? Neither one of these are coming back like this year. It's a very theoretical discussion. I think it's interesting to look back from a historical perspective, but it's like people like advocating. It's like, no, we need to be this. No, we need to be that. And it's, it's like these are mid 20th century ideologies. I mean, communism has been dead as effectively in the West for, ever since the Soviet Union collapsed, and it was already in a serious decline in the non-communist countries. That's a total LARP to bring that back. And even the communism that I was hearing expressed by the two people arguing for, which is Logo and somebody else, I don't know their name, they were advocating for like a anti-Western form of communism that's like Chinese, that's like, based on whatever Maoism and whatever the CCP is now about. And I was like, I don't know if that's going to work. And fascism is, not, is it really coming back either? I think also it's like goes with the state authoritarian. If you look at what the right is fighting about now, it's not fighting for more state authority. It's about fighting for the state to get off, get its boot off our necks. We don't want the boot more on our necks. And people just think that like, oh no, we can create a base statism. And I've said repeatedly, that's unlikely to happen. And I just think, advocate. And not only that, it's like not very good optics just to say, because like fascism is an epithet in our society. When people say like, I'm a fascist, they think you're a movie villain. And then you explain it. It's like, I want the state to have total control over your life. And you're like, I'm not really changing this opinion. So nor people like advocating for that position. It's like, you're just hindering it. You're just giving yourself a handicap and describing your ideology. So, that's all my thoughts on it. I don't think it had a kill stream. I guess it was entertaining. People got a lot of fun out of it. So I guess that's what's important. But I mean, as I won't keep repeating, it's interesting from a historical perspective, the differences between the two, but advocating for these as our current positions, our current ideologies to embrace, that's really anachronistic. I don't think it's relevant to our time period. The second question comes from one Cargo Shorts Respecter. There's like some people who love to comment on highly respecteds, the IQ supplements, and sometimes I'm pretty sure they're cognitive elite, and sometimes there's like a way to get like the cognitive elite, but people are just preferring to post in the comments. So sometimes, and this person did bring up an important question of what I didn't bring up last week, and I didn't bring up later on in this episode, but it's a very important question. He asked about my thoughts about our Black Queen Nicki Minaj, and Ballgate is what it's happening. And, just my thoughts on it. I find it massively entertaining. People who are getting mad that like people are making memes about Nicki Minaj and like, how dare we do this? She's a degenerate pop star. She's a black person. Like, we can't do this. This is like degenerate. Like, why are we doing this? It's time to fun max. We're fun maxing. This is hilarious what she's doing. I mean, just the story. It's like my cousin, his balls swell up and it ruined the wedding because of the vaccine. We're not sure if that happened, but it's whatever. It's funny content. And now she's like waging a jihad against reporters over this. And, it's like tons and tons of entertainment. And now there's all these people who are like thinking back, are like questioning the vaccine and being like, we don't want to take the vaccine because Nicki Minaj says these health effects. And it's like good that like there raises more skepticism about what these are, big, these these COVID tyrants want to impose on us. And I guess if it's coming from Nicki Minaj, it's like funny. And she's like just like destroying journalists too. And these journalists are coming after her family. They're threatening to dox them and intimidate them. And she's like, no, you're not. Like, here's your phone number on Instagram. Of course, not endorsing that. But I think all these reporters who feel like they can intimidate and harass ordinary citizens. And then like when somebody, isn't going to take that, you got to be careful there. You can't just bully people. And it's really funny with like, and all these people are just having a meltdown over Nicki Minaj and the COVID thing. So it's great content. Great memes. I think it's creating more resistance towards the COVID tyranny that they're trying to impose. And so overall, I think it's fine. And it's like if people were going to go crazy over Kanye West, somebody had the, I forget who tweeted this. I retweeted this. But somebody pointed out like people went nuts over Kanye West for wearing a MAGA hat. And then he took it off and initially apologized when this all occurred. I think this was in spring of 2018. And he kept becoming more MAGA, but he would like back down and apologize, probably due to Kim Kardashian. And people were like, but most people were just like enthusiastic and ecstatic about Kanye West. But now we're seeing with like Nicki Minaj, when like there's a backlash against her, she doubles down and goes to like full on nuclear war against her enemies. And you're just like, like, that's like really funny. And it's like, it's very entertaining. I think it's also a good message that like, she's not going to back down from these attacks. She is going to speak her truth. She's not going to let them come after her family. I have no earthly idea about the truth in the swollen balls story. There are been many health, negative side effects from the vaccine that people don't want to report on. I'm not sure if this is the case with Nicki Minaj's cousin or her cousin's friend or whatever the relation is, but. It's good that this whole thing is happening. I support it. I think it's cool. I think it's a lot. It's very funny, great content, very entertaining. Journalists are catching massive L's at the moment, and Nicki Minaj, our Black Queen, keeps on winning. So we salute Nicki Minaj. We hope she emerges victorious from this fight. It's pure she already is, and she doesn't back down. I do worry that she may back down if like a record label or anything comes after her. There really are, actually to go on, to a point that I love to emphasize is that there was a great case from over the weekend or last week showing this, is that there is like a magic exemption from COVID restrictions and regulations. And they are far more hesitant about coming down hard on Nicki Minaj. And even though the way they talk about her, they're like acting like they're talking about like a child. Like, this is a fully grown adult who can research things and learn things on their own. Like, she doesn't need like an adult to like guide her hand and tell her what it's about. But they're just like treating her like a child. It's like, oh, she just has misinformation. We need to correct her. If this is a white country artist, a totally different response. I think even record labels would have been dropping this person. And there's a lot of backlash against Nicki Minaj. I don't want to like de-emphasize that. And she was like suspended from Twitter for a bit. But if this had been happening with a country music artist who was like of similar fame, probably would have been dropped from a record label. And but there would have been even more controversy because like country music artists, like more of her fans are probably, more of country music fans are probably vaccine skeptic than the average pop music listener. And that's what primarily Nicki Minaj's fans are. So, but there is a magic exemption for a lot of these things. And we saw this when there is this hilarious video from New York City of this host at a restaurant saying like, oh, you can't come in to this black family because you're not vaccinated. The black family attacked her. Not that that's like funny that it attacked, but it's just like the video is like, hell no, I'm coming in. And then they attack this poor host who's just enforcing the rule. And like the whole crowd goes crazy. And it becomes a national news story. And Black Lives Matter is now going to protest outside this restaurant because for the racism. And the black people are just like making up that they heard racial slurs and racism from the staff. And because they know that's going to help their cause. And this becomes a much more difficult case. If this had been white people, these people would have been turned into the villains throughout the nation, national villains. They'd have been facing serious criminal charges. No one would be protesting outside of this restaurant. They would all be like, "Thank you, restaurant, for heroically standing up against these barbarians." And there'd be no support whatsoever for them. And there's even another story where conservatives went over. It's like this white restaurant owner kicked out this black family for not having their vaccine passports. It's like racism is back. And really the main resistance is like people have always wondered like why we don't have Aussie style lockdowns. And it is, and I said this before in podcasts, it is due to Magic Americans. That is a large reason. I mean, there's several others. I mean, it's like the way, our federalism works, even though people did point out that like, these states in Australia have a tremendous amount of power. They're not just like entirely, slaves to the federal government. There is still, federalism does still account for some of these differences. And it's also due to rural Americans. They really can't enforce this stuff out in rural America. I mean, like sheriffs out there, they have to maintain a good reputation in their county. And if they're seen as this this enforcer of this law that the entire county hates, like they're going to be hated. And they're like, I can't do my job. So that's just not going to work out in rural America. They can't enforce that in a lot of places throughout the country. But it's also particularly even in urban areas. It's like blacks are not getting vaccinated, or majority in New York City at least. And they're going to and they're going to go, act out if they're like told they can't enter a restaurant. It's either going to be like this is a sign of racism. A white guy is kicking out blacks for not having their vaccine passport. They can claim racism, or they can even claim racism when there's this. I think this is an Asian hostess. They attack her and they're saying that like she used the N-word, and they're just like that gives them argument that gives them the justification to attack and assault. And would be the same if they try to do lockdowns where they're sending social workers and police out into the hood to enforce that these people are staying home. Like they would be beaten, they'd be shot, they would have so much uncooperation, they would probably cause a riot. And like officials know that, and it would just look bad optics because they'd be like, look like racists now because any type of oppression visited upon blacks is immediately going to be said to be racist. They would just not do it. It would give them too much of a headache. So that's one of the reasons why we would not have Aussie-style lockdowns here due to our wonderful Magic Americans. So, they're really doing the work that whites won't do. Even though I think it's similar cases in rural America, even though it's not necessarily violent. They just can't enforce this stuff in a lot of places in America. And there's a couple of other reasons too, but those are the big ones. So, with that in mind, that's all we have for Highly Respected today. Make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and to subscribe to Highly Respected Substack at highly respected.substack.com. And until next time, stay respected.